In the flickering light of a massive bonfire, as if pulled from the shadows, the Skald stood tall, a living embodiment of ancient legends poised to spill from his lips. His voice, deep and mysterious, echoed through the ages as he began his tale, inviting listeners to immerse themselves in a world of divine blood and intertwined destinies. In the distant, forgotten mountains, where the wind wailed like the lament of gods, a forbidden son was born. Young Halfdan, Tyr's illegitimate son, born of the god of justice and war, carried his father's strength, yet his birth condemned him to a life in the shadows. His mother, a mortal warrior maiden, concealed him from the wrath of giants who craved his death, for Tyr's blood flowed within her as well. The ground beneath his feet was a battlefield, and the secret of his birth, a heavy burden. An elder, loyal to Tyr, secretly taught him the art of combat, protective runes, and the value of honor, unaware that the very essence of the war god resided within the boy. But the threat surged like an unstoppable tide. The giants, driven by ancient fury, threatened to invade Midgard. And then Halfdan's fate became intertwined with that of the 9 realms. His blood, marked by Tyr's divine nature, became the sole hope against the Jotnar, monstrous beings of unimaginable power. The young hunter was called to the greatest battle of his life. However, as every warrior knows, the true battle is not against the enemy ahead, but against the ghosts of the past. Halfdan would have to learn the truth about his father, the god of justice and honorable battles, which would test his own honor. Amidst steel and flesh, Halfdan would face a dilemma greater than any blade, a battle not only against giants, but against the very honor of his bloodline. In the final confrontation, he would have to decide whether to follow in his father's footsteps or forge his own story, even if it meant losing himself to the darkness. The bitter winds of Jotunheim seemed to whisper ancient secrets as an unexpected tale began to unfold. It was a closely guarded secret, a forbidden moment that was never meant to happen, yet it altered the course of many destinies. Tyr, god of justice and honorable battles, the strong hand of Asgard, was not immune to the impulses that stir in the hearts of mortals. In a fleeting moment of weakness, he met a mortal warrior, a maiden of great courage and extraordinary beauty, her eyes burning with a ferocity that could challenge the gods themselves. Her name was Astrid, a fisherman's daughter, yet with a spirit that refused to be confined by the sea's calm. The winds of a cold night brought them together. Astrid carried news of an imminent attack by the Jotnar, giants dwelling in the icy mountains. She walked through the fields, filled with a warrior's fury, yet possessing the tenderness of a woman who understood the world's beauty and its burdens. Tyr, on his way to Asgard, unexpectedly crossed her path. The god, deemed invincible, the wielder of the sword who spoke for justice, found himself captivated by Astrid's purity. Their encounter was brief but intense, a single night of forbidden passion that promised as much destruction as salvation. The heavens were covered in heavy clouds, and the moon seemed to hide, perhaps in shame of what had transpired. Unaware of what awaited her, Astrid carried within her womb the seed of a divine being, a child, a son of a god, destined to live a mortal life. She could not rely on the god's protection, for her love was condemned, and her son would be hunted if the truth were revealed. Therefore, she found refuge in the hills with a wise elder loyal to Tyr, who understood the threats the young infant would face. Astrid surrendered to her fate, to the sacrifice life had imposed upon her. The birth was difficult, agonizing. For hours, Astrid's cries of pain and prayers echoed in the cold air. As the infant, with pale skin and fiery hair, took its first breath, his mother's life flickered out like a candle in the wind. Astrid left the world with a broken heart, knowing her journey would not be complete, but that she had given something great to the world, a son who would carry Tyr's essence and who would one day become more than mortal. The wise elder, entrusted with the infant's protection, took him to a small fishing village in Midgard, a secluded place where waves crashed against sturdy rocks and homes were fashioned from aged timber. The village was as unpretentious as the sea surrounding it, its fishermen taciturn yet wise. Young Halfdan, named in homage to the great Tyr, was raised under the elder's watchful eye, a man who, despite life's hardships, never ceased to love and teach. This man, who never revealed the secrets of the past, raised Halfdan as his own son, teaching him to live with honor, with courage, and, above all, with the wisdom of one who knows that life can be merciless. From his early years, Halfdan stood out among his peers. He found no solace in the measured life of a fisherman, in the quiet of calm waters, or in the patience required for fishing. An untamed energy, an inner strength surged within him, making him an anomaly in this tranquil world. Other boys looked at him with a mixture of admiration and awe. He grew by leaps and bounds, his body strengthening, muscles developing with a power uncommon for his age. By the age of 10, he already surpassed many adult men in the village. His eyes, as deep as the ocean's abyss, seemed to absorb everything around him, as if he was constantly observing and awaiting something more from life. Halfdan's childhood was marked by loneliness. The elder, who had taught him respect for nature and his surroundings, was preparing him for something greater. He never spoke directly of Halfdan's past, but his gaze was always filled with deep mystery, as if he carried the weight of unspoken secrets. Halfdan, in turn, felt that something else awaited him beyond this village, something that called to him. During long walks along the shore, while other fishermen cast their nets, he pondered his true origin. He couldn't fully comprehend it, but the feeling that he was destined for greatness never left him. In his teenage years, Halfdan's transformation became even more evident. He was no longer content with the monotonous work of a fisherman. Instead, he began to train in secret, using stones and wooden debris as weapons, disciplining his body. He didn't want to be a mere fisherman, a man confined by daily routine. He dreamed of more. He wanted to be like the legendary warriors he'd heard of in rare travels beyond the village, like the heroes who fought giants and monsters born of shadow. But training was only the beginning. He needed not only strength, he yearned to know the truth of his lineage, a truth his heart sensed but his mind could not grasp. By 18, Halfdan was unrecognizable. His muscular body, full of strength and agility, no longer resembled that of a simple fisherman. He had transformed into a combat machine, forged by nature and rigorous training. The sword, gifted to him by the elder in Tyr's name, became his faithful weapon. He wielded it with such mastery that he struck fear even into the village's seasoned warriors. But it wasn't only his physical might that made him a formidable opponent. His sharp mind, instincts, and an unquenchable thirst for knowledge also played a crucial role. He eagerly absorbed knowledge of battle tactics, runes, and protective magic, which the elder taught him. However, as Halfdan grew stronger and more experienced, an inner unrest gnawed at him. He no longer saw himself as a simple fisherman or an ordinary man. The burden of his lineage, though unspoken, became increasingly palpable. He felt that destiny was calling him, but he didn't know how, from where, or when. The emptiness within him grew unbearable, and he felt with certainty that beyond the horizon, beyond the small village, something greater awaited him. Under the pale sun, as the sea whispered its secrets, Halfdan gazed into the distance, feeling a power greater than his own beckon him to leave his native shores. He knew that somewhere, destiny awaited him, and this journey would undoubtedly test not only his physical strength, but also his spirit. Something told him that the future would bring him more than he could imagine. He was not merely the son of a mortal and a god, but a man destined for great deeds. And soon, the winds of fate would begin to fill his sails. The winds sweeping over Midgard carried a premonition of doom that could not be ignored. The sky was overcast with clouds, and the sea, which had always brought life and calm to the fishing settlements, now crashed furious waves against the rocks, as if nature itself had rebelled. Winter arrived earlier than usual, bringing cold and darkness to the northern lands. It seemed that some evil force was preparing to invade the world of men. A silence preceding the storm hung over Midgard's villages and forests, as if all living things sensed the approach of an inevitable catastrophe. And they were not mistaken. The Jötnar, ancient giants, had gathered their forces, threatening not only Midgard's peace but the very existence of its people. The attack began suddenly, like a bolt from the blue. A wild and untamed horde of ferocious Jötnar descended upon Midgard's lands, bringing destruction and chaos. They were immense, almost immortal in their strength, their bodies covered in stone and ice. Their eyes, cold as the northern glaciers, burned with hatred and a thirst for vengeance. The first villages attacked stood no chance. Their homes were crushed like straw huts, their inhabitants, mostly fishermen and simple peasants, torn to pieces without mercy. Within days, a fiery and bloody trail stretched across Midgard's lands, and the Jötnar continued their advance, leaving only death and devastation in their wake. On that fateful night, the astute elder who raised Halfdan with his wise gaze sensed the ominous breath of a divine presence. His spirit trembled, anticipating the inevitable. In a nightmarish vision, Tyr himself appeared before him, the formidable god of war and justice. With a mighty voice, echoing as if from the depths of creation, Tyr proclaimed to the elder the hour when Halfdan must engage the Jötnar. "He is the chosen one," Tyr's voice thundered. "The illegitimate son, born to atone for my sins. He is humanity's last hope. Let Tyr's sword guide his hand. Let divine fury ignite within him. Send him into battle without delay. Only he can save Midgard." This message was an unyielding command. The wise elder, seasoned by years, realized Halfdan's hour had come. He summoned the young man and, for the first time, looked at him with a mixture of pride and apprehension to reveal the truth of his lineage. "Fate is relentless, Halfdan," the elder said with a heavy voice. "Tyr, your father, must atone for his debt, and you are the key to fulfilling his legacy. Go forth, fight the Jötnar, and restore the justice your father could not secure." Halfdan, who had spent his life preparing for trials he didn't fully comprehend, felt something profound upon hearing these words. The weight of the world settled on his shoulders, yet a flame of vengeance ignited within him. He instinctively felt that the battle against the Jötnar was not merely a fight for survival, but something deeply personal. Tyr's sword, which he now wielded with perfection, gained a new, previously unknown meaning. He headed towards the battlefield, feeling the icy wind pierce his skin and the sky darken with clouds, as if nature itself sympathized with the giant's rage. When he reached the nearest village, the Jötnar were already raging unchecked. Homes burned, cries of despair echoed in the distance, and gigantic, savage giants were crushing everything in their path. Without hesitation, Halfdan raised his sword and rushed into battle, feeling the fury of 1,000 warriors within him. The struggle was merciless. Each strike of Halfdan's sword pierced the giants with deadly precision. The sound of metal clashing against bodies of stone and ice was deafening, but Halfdan did not yield. He acted on instinct, as if fate itself guided him. He felt the presence of a god in his blood, and every movement of his sword seemed dictated by Tyr's will. The battle lasted for long hours, but in the end, Halfdan, consumed by rage and superhuman skill, defeated the Jötnar one by one, driving them from Midgard's lands. The village was saved, but at a great cost. Giant blood stained the earth, and the wind carried the stench of death. However, as Halfdan walked across the battlefield, something strange happened amidst the carnage. One of the fallen Jötnar still breathed. In its death throes, it lifted its head and rasped in a voice full of hatred, "Son of Tyr, you don't know the truth about your father's deeds, what he did to us. The Jötnar's hatred is eternal, and you are just an illegitimate one." Before Halfdan could fully grasp it, the giant took its last breath. But its words thundered through Halfdan's mind like a storm. He, the son of Tyr, a bastard? How could this be? Unable to comprehend the meaning of these words, Halfdan returned to the village where he grew up, with a heavy heart and turmoil in his soul. Facing the elder, he demanded an explanation. The elder, with sadness in his eyes, revealed the whole truth. He spoke of Halfdan's origin, of the forbidden love between Tyr and his mother Astrid, the mortal warrior maiden. He recounted Tyr's past deeds, how the god had unleashed a great war between the Jötnar and Asgard, deeds the giants would never forgive. He spoke of generations-long vengeance, and how Halfdan, as Tyr's son, was born to atone for the sins of the past. "You are the only one who can correct what your father did," the elder said sadly. "The Jötnar are still among us, and they will return. You must expel them from Midgard forever, whatever the cost. You are the chosen one, Halfdan. Your sword is the last defense against total annihilation." The elder's words crashed down upon Halfdan like a verdict, and for the first time, he understood the full weight of his destiny. He was not just a warrior, he was the key to his father's atonement and, perhaps, to Midgard's salvation. Now he knew his path was far from over. The Jötnar continued their war in Midgard, and he was the only one who could end this threat once and for all. What he would do would be more than just a battle. It would be the fight of his life. For justice, for honor, and perhaps for vengeance against a man who never knew what it meant to be a father. The winds of Midgard changed, and with them, the spirit of the world shifted. Years passed, but Halfdan's rage did not subside. With each Jötun that fell by his sword, he felt a fleeting relief, yet also a growing disappointment, as if the vengeance that should have answered all his doubts and anger was insufficient. Over time, he became the greatest monster hunter the Nine Realms had ever known. His fame spread like wildfire, not only across Midgard, but to every corner of the known lands. With each battle against a Jötun, with each victory, he drew closer to his ultimate goal: to eradicate the giant's presence in Midgard, where his father Tyr's blood was still stained by the betrayal and pain of past mistakes. As Halfdan continued his bloody hunt, the colossal shadow of the Jötun king grew ever more ominous. This colossal ruler of giants, who held them in an iron grip, watched Halfdan's triumphs with unceasing fury, fueled by hatred and humiliation. Each fallen Jötun was a painful blow to his throne, an insult to his power that had seemed unshakable for generations. The Jötnar, with their ancient culture of honor and strength, saw Halfdan not merely as an enemy, but as an echo of the tragedy caused by Tyr, the god they blamed for their misfortunes. To the Jötun king, Halfdan was not just a hunter, but a living symbol of everything that had gone wrong for his race, and this could not go unpunished. The Jötun king, whose power was rumored to split the heavens, would not tolerate the demise of his subjects. He began sending his troops into Midgard, but none of them returned. Those who sought vengeance for Halfdan vanished into the abyss of his wrath. The news reaching the Jötun king only fueled his hatred. Each new messenger recounting the hunter's exploits only strengthened his resolve to end him once and for all. Years passed, and Halfdan roamed the frozen and desolate lands, tracking the last Jötnar hidden in Midgard. Each battle became harder, for the giants, though few, grew increasingly fierce and desperate. They sensed their end approaching, and this made them even more dangerous. But Halfdan did not waver. Tyr's sword, an extension of himself, shone with a deadly light. Every swing, every blow resonated with the strength of a god, an unstoppable power that swept everything in its path. What began as a son's personal vendetta for his father's sins gradually transformed into a mission to save Midgard from a threat that had plagued it for centuries. But at the same time, something broke within Halfdan. He ceased to be merely a Jotun hunter. He became the embodiment of the giant's hatred for Tyr, and that rage, somehow, became his own. He had spilled so much blood, so many deaths were on his hands, that the line between the Son of Tyr and the monster he hunted seemed increasingly blurred. It was at this moment that the Jotun king began preparing for the final clash. Determined to end this threat once and for all, he gathered the remnants of his army, a legion of giants possessing unnatural strength and monsters capable of destroying anything that dared challenge his authority. The plan was simple: invade Midgard and crush the hunter and all he represented. The king understood that the battle with Halfdan would not be easy, but he also knew that the only way for the Jotnar to regain their lost honor was to defeat the Son of Tyr. Victory over Halfdan would open the path to vengeance for the Jotnar, and perhaps even to the restoration of their former glory. And so, like a storm poised to erupt, the Jotun king moved his army towards Midgard. The earth trembled beneath the giant's footsteps, and the winds howled as if presaging inevitable destruction. The king knew this would be the last battle, and there was no turning back. He sought not merely to kill Halfdan, he sought to obliterate the very notion that a mortal, any mortal, could defy the Jotnar and the gods who created them. But Halfdan, with the spirit of an untiring hunter, had no intention of retreating. He understood that the final battle was approaching, and that the full weight of honor, rage, and destiny would rest upon his shoulders. What began as a simple vendetta had now transformed into a struggle for Midgard's survival, for the balance between realms, and, above all, for the truth of who he truly was. With Tyr's sword in hand, Halfdan prepared for the greatest test of his life. The Jotnar were approaching, and with them, a new chapter in the world's history was about to begin. The hunter was ready to face the Jotun king, but now, more than ever, he understood that the battle would be not only against the giants, but against his father's legacy. He felt it in every fiber of his being, and set forth without hesitation toward the final confrontation. In Midgard, the winds of war began to blow harder, more fiercely, as if the very essence of the gods sensed the gravity of the unfolding destiny. Tyr, the god of justice and war, with anxiety and rage, became aware of the impending catastrophe. From the heights of his golden palace, he watched as the Jotnar, led by their monstrous king, prepared to invade Midgard. He knew that his son Halfdan, a hunter forged in pain and blood, could not alone withstand the immense army of giants. The man who had so long and fiercely pursued his enemies now faced a threat that would challenge even the gods. And Tyr, with the wisdom of ages and the burden of fatherhood, understood that only he and his brothers could save Midgard. Without losing a second, Tyr summoned Asgard's most powerful warriors, the gods who had fought beside him in the most epic battles. And with a grim countenance, he spoke, "Brothers in arms, the hour of reckoning has come. Midgard stands on the brink of its greatest trial. The fury of the ice giants is unstoppable, but united, we can push them back. Thor, my brother, you shall be my right hand in this battle, and all who seek Asgard's glory, follow me. Let us face destiny head-on, and let the people of Midgard see that the gods will not abandon them in their time of need." Thor, the Thunderer, whose golden hair seemed to absorb the glint of storms, was ready to unleash his wrath like a raging element. His hammer, Mjolnir, seemed to pulse with energy, making the very earth tremble. Beside him stood other gods and warriors of Asgard, ready for battle. Freya, goddess of war and wisdom, in a golden cloak shining like the sun, walked with the confidence of a lioness on the hunt. Vidar, son of vengeance, in iron boots, strode fearlessly forward, his gaze fixed on his objective. Loki, the god of trickery, with an enigmatic smirk, anticipated war as an opportunity to test his cunning. Odin, the All-Father, from the height of his throne, observed the unfolding events with his discerning, immortal gaze, understanding that a clash was inevitable. He believed in his sons, but knew that Midgard's fate now rested in Halfdan's hands. Gathering all of Asgard's might, Tyr and his brothers descended to the world of men, ready to fight shoulder to shoulder with his son. Meanwhile, in Midgard, Halfdan prepared for the final battle of his life. The Jotun army was advancing, a monstrous horde of giant warriors, each more terrifying than the last. Their shadows obscured the horizon, the earth trembled beneath their footsteps, and the sky seemed to darken, presaging a bloody storm. Knowing the battle was inevitable, Halfdan, bearing the weight of his destiny and with the spirit of a fearless warrior, ordered the residents of the coastal villages to retreat inland to protect the innocent. He was ready to face the Jotnar alone, but a premonition of something greater stirred within him. This would be more than just a battle for Midgard's survival. It would be a chance to clear the stain from his father, Tyr's name. The calm before the storm was shattered by a rumble that shook the earth. The sky was pierced by a blinding bolt of lightning, and from nowhere, Thor, the Thunderer, appeared. Mjolnir raised above his head. Beside him stood Tyr, sword forged in Asgard's very smithies, ready to meet the encroaching evil. Behind them followed the other gods, manifested as mighty warriors, like a divine army. Freya, with a warlike smile and burning eyes, advanced with the might of an eagle swooping on its prey, and Vidar, in his iron boots, seemed unbreakable. Loki, with his ever-present cunning smile, appeared and vanished like a phantom in the shadows, akin to a shrewd hunter stalking his prey. Halfdan, taking his stance, looked to the sky and witnessed the arrival of the gods, a celestial host descending from the heavens as if nature itself had manifested. He did not hesitate. The anger and honor that had driven him until this moment now gave way to a higher purpose. He stood before the gods themselves, and for the first time felt no shame for his lineage. He felt Tyr's strength in his veins and knew that, alongside the gods, he would not only stand firm, but crush the Jotnar, freeing Midgard from the scourge that had tormented the realms for centuries. The battle that unfolded next was a sight worthy of legends. The earth trembled with the Jotnar's stomping feet, and their weapons sliced through the air like lightning. The gods fought shoulder to shoulder with Halfdan. Tyr, sword in hand, was a whirlwind of steel, hewing stone giants as if they were made of clay. Every strike of his blade was like retribution for past grievances, and the giants fell like trees felled at the root. He fought with an unstoppable fury, yet also with the wisdom of a god, not succumbing to blind rage like his son. Thor, Mjolnir in hand, unleashed tornadoes of lightning and thunder upon his foes. His blows were so mighty that the Jotnar were flung back, their bodies crushed by waves of energy. He fought like the storm itself, fierce and unstoppable. Freya, in her golden cloak, advanced with lethal precision, her blades dancing in a deadly waltz. Every movement was an embodiment of grace and destruction, and giants fell before her, unable to comprehend her deadly beauty. Vidar fought with incredible strength, his iron boots crushing everything in his path. His roar was louder than thunder, and he advanced tirelessly, hewing down any foe who dared approach. Loki, in contrast, was unpredictable and cunning, creating illusions and traps that disoriented the Jotnar. He fought not with brute force, but with guile, sowing chaos and disorder on the battlefield. At the very heart of this storm of gods and giants, Halfdan fought alongside his father, Tyr. He wielded Tyr's sword with divine fury, his strikes precise and deadly. Every one of his attacks was a demonstration of his divine lineage, and he did not hesitate. He knew his struggle was not only against the Jötnar, but against the shame of his origin and, above all, against his father's past mistakes. In the very midst of the fierce battle, the ruler of the ice giants, the Jötnar, emerged on the battlefield, an embodiment of unbridled rage and total destruction. His colossal figure seemed woven from hatred itself. Two burning lakes, not eyes, seared everything with their gaze, and a thunderous roar made even the celestials tremble. He was the personification of malice, relentlessly advancing on Halfdan and Tyr, incinerating them with his furious gaze. The Jötnar army, as if obeying an invisible signal, parted to form a wide circle around their leaders, and the furious battle gave way to an epic confrontation of father and son against the mightiest of giants. The Jotun lord unleashed his sword with monstrous force, and it seemed every one of his blows could cleave the very earth. But Halfdan, with Tyr's weapon in hand, fearlessly met the looming threat, while his father, Tyr, fought with calculated strategy, aiming to neutralize the king's brute force. Together, father and son were a unified force, each movement reflecting the might of their lineage, divine fury, and unyielding human will. After a prolonged and bloody struggle, the Jotun king, exhausted from battle against the unified front of Tyr and Halfdan, finally fell. Tyr's sword, guided by his son's hand, plunged directly into the giant's heart, and with a dying gasp, it collapsed lifelessly. The surviving Jötnar, witnessing their leader's fall, fled in a panic, leaving Midgard in peace. After the victory, Tyr looked with pride at his son, the warrior who had overcome Midgard's greatest foes. "Halfdan," he said with a solemn smile, "you fought like a true god. The honor of the Celestials has descended upon you, and a place among us is now assured for you. Come to Asgard and become part of our family." But Halfdan, with a sudden gleam of realization in his eyes, shook his head in refusal. "I cannot, father," he replied firmly. "Midgard needs me. I am the guardian of this land, and here my sword will remain an eternal symbol of my oath to protect this realm from any threat." Tyr looked at his son with respect and pride. "So be it. The doors of Asgard are always open to you, but if your duty is to protect Midgard, then let it be so. May Tyr's sword guide your hand." And with these words, Halfdan, the bane of the Jötnar, became the eternal guardian of Midgard, vowing to his last breath to maintain peace between mortals and gods.